topic right now. Do stories about Enki and Enlil overlap with Genesis in the Bible? And the keys on Brother Divine. Drive safe, young brother.
That was smooth as hell, man. I like that.
Appreciate it.
All right, make sure you keep your hands and feet in the car at all times. When I'm driving, make sure that seatbelt is on because we about to go somewhere. All right, check it. So, what I was trying to understand is when I see the term overlap, when it says, "Does Enki and Enlil overlap with the Genesis?" When you say overlap, you mean can they be found in that primary text? Is that what you're saying? Or whoever made up the topic of the room? Anybody?
It's, ba-
Mikey B.
it
See,
basically,
Mikey
yeah,
B.
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
basically that. Yeah.
yeah. What
Yeah.
happened?
He asking you a question. Divine is directing the question to you about your topic.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, just so yeah, so I can fully entrench myself in where you coming from. I was saying that that term overlap that you're using, are you saying that Enki and Elil can be found in the Bible? Is that what you mean when you say
yeah.
overlap? Or do you mean they're parallel to one
It's
another? Or you mean
like
they're
it's like a
cross
metaphor.
intersecting? How
It's
does that
like a
work?
metaphor. It could be overlap. It could be like it's like the way I be doing these type of topics is like which angle you want to go, which way. You know what I'm saying? Make it easier for others. Which angle you want to start off with. But yeah, overlap.
Are they
Okay.
connected, basically?
Yes.
Okay, gotcha. So Inky, you're aware that he's a subterranean water depth entity,
I,
correct?
I,
So
I,
he's responsible for the depths of the
I
sea. He
know.
oversees that.
Yes, I know about all that. Yes.
No, I'm saying, okay,
No.
so if
Yes.
that's
Yes.
the case, gotcha. So if that's the case, then who is he equivalent to in the Bible? Tahum, Leviathan, who is he equivalent to? Yam, which is more of an Ugaritic deity, but Yam meaning sea. Who would he be equivalent to? If he's overlapping or if it's in the Bible, who would we equate him to? Who is his equal, his counterpart? Who's his parallel? Who's his
Give it to us,
doppelganger?
bro. Give it to us. You know what I'm saying?
No, it's not there. I can't give you something that I can't find. So that's why I'm asking
Yeah, I
if
think,
y'all have the insight
It's
to
a
yeah,
break it down
personal
for the brother.
So
question.
if I can
look,
add on to it,
That's it.
I,
Yeah. Go
if
I
I
ahead.
can,
want to
I
ask this.
think what we were,
Go ahead. Go ahead.
what we were
It's
saying
not
is
this one.
that the information, okay,
No, no, no,
what
no,
we
no.
were
My
saying,
bad.
okay, yeah, what we were saying, this is to the brother who's speaking. What I think what the topic was trying to say, or because we got into this topic before in another build session, but what we were saying was that the information in the Bible has its origins in Sumerian doctrine as well as Egyptian doctrine. And in essence, what we're arguing is that the information in the Bible isn't an original document. It has a lot of the same similar stories that you will find in the Sumerian text. You will find similar stories in biblical texts. And so the question becomes an origin question, meaning
So a question
what
of
is
provenance, right?
the right, meaning an origin question insofar as the origin of the Torah. Because when that question comes up, what we
Hmm.
find is that there is no original documentation for the Torah because it doesn't exist according to scholars. There
It
is
doesn't
no
exist.
original Torah. No, unless you know where
Okay.
the original Torah
Yeah.
is.
So
That
so yeah.
according,
So
let me just finish this.
okay. Go
According
ahead.
to biblical scholars, they claim an individual by the name of Moses received the Torah, and he recorded this information. And so when the question comes, who is this person, Moses? Where is he historically? And where's the actual original document called the Torah? Where's that? And they have no evidence of either. They have no evidence of this individual. They have no evidence of the actual document he supposedly received called the Torah. It doesn't exist. None of the source material doesn't exist historically. And so when the question becomes, well, why is it that when you read certain information in the Torah, it has similar information that's in Sumerian documents, and you do have source material out of Sumerian? This like this Adam and Eve story in the Sumerian tablets relates or correlates to the Adam and Eve story that you find in the biblical text. And so it makes the argument that this must be the source of the information, especially when, according to the Hebrew text, they claim their patriarch is Abraham, the father of their nations. Now, Abraham wasn't a Hebrew. Abraham wasn't an Israelite. Abraham was a Chaldean. So he was raised in that same area where these stories were being taught. He was raised in that culture where these stories were being taught. And so it just happens to be an unusual coincidence where you see this similar information, especially also Jews teach that they sojourn in Babylon. This is where they said they lost a lot of their stuff. So they do admit they lived in with these cultures. And
I
so,
got you. So
okay, go ahead.
I just want to break in. Yes. So you said a lot, and I understand what you're saying. Some of it is deviating away from the subject matter at hand because I asked the question. Right, question is still not being answered, and I guess once it's addressed, then we can follow to additional points. Right. I don't want to move the goalpost too early. Right. So the question I asked in regards to Enki and Enlil, if there is an equivalent to them in the text that is on the table, which is the so-called Bible, right? I'm asking, what is that? Because if we're going to start making a relationship or a one-to-one mapping between two domains, we have to be able to identify the variables. So I'm asking you, in the domain, which is the consciousness of Enki and Enlil, and who they are, what they represent, Ea being from the Akkadian text and Enki being from what we call the Sumerian text, right? If we're going to look for a parallel to this in another domain, which is another text, I'm asking you, what is that variable in the other domain that it aligns with so we could do a one-to-one mapping before we build the case to say anything further? That's what's on the table. So can you please point to me where in that text is the parallel to Enki? That's the first question I asked, and it's still
So,
not being answered.
what's your
Hey,
take
bro.
on it? Have you ever dug into that, or?
Okay, yes, I have. I teach this
All
stuff. I got a degree in
right.
all
So
this.
what?
So hold
That's
on.
where we
Let me
start then.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, no
yeah.
problem. So I'll answer. So my thing was, I was listening to a lot of insightful information, and I just wanted to engage in a conversation and contribute. And that's why I asked that question, because once we identify the function of Enki, because when you're looking at, if we're dealing with the Akkadian, because that's how we got knowledge of the Sumerian, yeah, we're looking at what we call verbal nouns, right? So ki means what in Sumerian? What does ki mean? Ki, that suffix ki. Anybody?
All right.
Means
Just,
KI
earth.
in
just
Sumerian
run
So
it,
so
bro.
means earth.
Yeah.
Means
no,
earth.
I got you. It means earth. Okay, just like
All right.
Anunnaki has to do with earth. So this is why when you say in ki meaning earth, in means the subterranean part of the earth, right? I'm saying there's no equivalent entity that we can look at in another primary text, if it's called the Bible, if that's what's on the table, that aligns with the function of Enki, the actual verbal noun itself, there's no cognate. If so, please point it out. If we're dealing with the Akkadian, which we would have to because that is an East Semitic language, we're dealing with a West Semitic language. Sumerian altogether is an isolate. So I'm asking, is there any equivalent? I have not
Yeah.
found it, and that's simply why I'm asking.
Okay.
You brothers have knowledge, sisters have knowledge, and that's what I'm asking.
All right.
Since that's the topic, that's why.
Hey, Rahul back. Let me address that real quick. Okay. So for and what you're asking is actually a good question, but we've also like to enlighten people, right, about the fact that Enki is a title of the original individual that we're speaking about, and you stated his name, Ea, right, which can be found phonetically and Hebrew for the being who gave his name to Moses. One thing I also like to speak about is that this Enki has a name, right? Another title called Nudimud, spelled Nudimmud, Nudimud. And in the language, it literally translates to artful fashioner, or he who fashions things. So the question that you're asking, is there an equivalent with the character? The answer would be yes, because this same individual is spoken about in the first chapter of Genesis, hovering above the Mayim in Hebrew, right? As you stated, he is the one of the depths, the deep waters, where he received
All
his
right.
name. Let me finish my point. I'll let
Okay.
you
Go ahead, King.
just
I was just gonna build with you, but go
okay.
ahead.
All right. Grab a pen and pencil. You take a note. All right. This as it says, he whose home is water. It does not mean that that is his primary function on the earth, which is why he received a new title. Enki, meaning master or lord, in Enki means earth. And when you say that was not his only name, that was a title. He had many titles, including, like I stated, Nudimud, which literally means artful fashioner. So to address your question directly, who would Enki be? He would be the fat one who fashioned mankind. If you look up the cosmology of Sumerian creation story, you find out that this Enki was not just purely in the depths of the waters. He had a direct role in the creation of the Adamites, and this is proven.
Okay.
And anybody
So
that wants to look that up, let me finish my point. You could, like I said, take a pen and pencil. You could take these notes, or you can address them point by point. I know I'm dropping a lot, right? But just take a pen and pencil. You could take the notes. So this Enki, right, according to the Sumerian doctrine, right, stated in the Atrahasis, you have documents such as the Atrahasis, the Gilgamesh epics, and the Enuma Elish, which literally translates to "when on high" from Anu, speaks about the seven tablets of creation, right, where there's multiple variations amongst different cities in Sumeria, right? Different creation accounts, mainly dealing with the seed of Enki, or sometimes his son Marduk, right? Speaking about the creation of mankind, where they directly make the statement, "Let us make man in our image and after our likeness." So, who is this Enki, and who is he equivalent to, according to the Sumerian and the biblical text? And where, as the brother stated, there are no records, there's no facts of a Torah. What we do see is, or what can be proven, what can be substantiated in stone, clay stone tablets, over 22,000 of them, are the Sumerian documents of the creation. And they do speak about this Nudimud, this artful fashioner, who created these group of beings called Adamu in the Sumerian language. And I land there.
All right. So thank you for sharing that. Nothing you said is unfamiliar with me. I know exactly what you're talking about. And that's why I need to hold you to some of the statements that you made, right? So is Enki and Ea, are they from the same language? Or both words from the same language? Yes or no?
No, not directly,
Okay.
but both.
So they're
Go
not,
ahead.
they're definitely not. Hold on. They're definitely not. So in the transliteration coming from Sumerian to Akkadian, how are we mapping the phonemes and the morphemes so that way they look similar and retain their same function in the translated language?
Where
What's the
they
process of
they
that?
don't
Because
they don't,
because a sti-
and I didn't
thank
state that
you.
they did.
No, I didn't say you did, but that's why I'm asking you a question because we're getting granular with the information, right? So, being that that's established, you also mentioned some epics, like the Epic of Atrahasis, right? You mentioned that epic. In that epic, did Enki create man? This artful fashioner, did he create man in the Epic of Atrahasis?
No, that's spoken about in the
Okay,
seven
so
tablets of creation.
hold on. So we're trying to find sources. The Enuma Elish, did he create man in Enuma Elish?
That's correct.
So
According,
he created man in Enuma Elish. Okay.
that's correct.
Go ahead, King. Go ahead. Okay, cool.
Just want to answer
So
that.
when you reference, no problem, my brother. So when you reference the Epic of Atrahasis, what was the point of you referencing Enki with that source?
Oh, only the fact that this same Enki is found in the Atrahasis. I was not answering the question of
Okay, cool.
creation. I was answering the question that you asked can this Enki be found in the
Yes,
Bible?
and
Can
I'm getting
multiple?
there.
Okay, cool. All right.
Gotcha. And I'm getting there. So I'm trying to build the case to kind of see where you're coming from, to see where we are similar and where we are apart, right? So you said the one that hovers over the waters in the book of Bereshit, which is Genesis. You said that that entity was Enki, functioning as a title name or tutelary name at that time. Is that the reference you made?
No, I didn't
Okay.
say.
So what?
I
So,
gave I
so
gave the
what do you
reference
say
as
about the
Ea.
equivalent?
I
Yeah.
gave the reference
Oh,
as
Ea.
Ea.
Okay. So
That's correct.
Ea, which would be correct, which would be the Akkadian name for Enki, right? So you say Ea is the entity that was hovering over the waters in the book of Genesis, right? Is that what you said?
That would be the because you asked for an equivalent. So yes,
The equivalent, correct? Yeah.
that's correct.
Okay. So the entity that was hovering over the waters, what was the name of that entity in the actual text itself in the book of Genesis? Did it have a name?
It says Elohim in the Hebrew, which is being
No, that's not what
translated.
it says there. Nope,
Okay.
nope, that's not it, brother. It's not it. Let's go back and read it, because if we go back and read it, we'll be able to get the answer, right? So in Genesis chapter 1, going in verse 2, right, it tells us what that entity is. So I'll go ahead and I'll give it to y'all. We go through it in Hebrew, right? So wa haaretz yatar tohu wabohu we hosek al pene tehom we ruach Elohim. So that's why I asked tehom. That word tehom has an equivalent in Akkadian, and it refers to a entity that is over the deep, right? But here, they're translated simply to mean of the deep. It's a common singular noun, okay? Now, the we ruach, we just means and, this is a conjunctive and, so we remove we out the way. Ruach Elohim, the ruach there is the, what we call the common masculine construct, because it relies on the following noun. It's the ruach Elohim. That's what is hovering over the waters. Merachefet. That's what's hovering over the waters. So you're saying that Ruach Elohim is the equivalent to Ea in the Akkadian language. So if that's the case, when did Enki ever play that subservient role? Because we're looking at a construct now, possessive. When did he ever play that subservient role in regards to the text that we find him in Sumer? Can you give us a source where we can find that, we can identify that?
Did you describe when you say subservient rule? Can you explain what you mean by that? I want to make sure I understand the
Okay,
question you're asking.
no problem, King. No problem, King. So where it says the ruach of Elohim, it's a possessive. The ruach is a possessive. If I say the house of Nebat, what does that mean? Which one is the superior? Which one's the inferior? If I say the house of Nebat, what is the superior and what is the inferior
Well,
in
the
that
house
syntax?
would be the inferior. Is that what you're asking about?
Thank you. Yes, yes, my brother. So Ruach, Elohim, Ruach is in the what we call the noun, right? That's the type of the part of speech it is. Common construct singular, right? That's
Right.
why we don't see a suffix like we do in the feminine. It is a construct, which means it relies upon the following noun, which just in this case is Elohim, and therefore it is the possessive of Elohim, making it the inferior. And I'm asking you if Ea or Enki, where did he ever play an inferior role? Because you say he's the one that's hovering over the waters in Genesis chapter 1, verse 2. When did Ea or Enki ever play this role in any epic that he's
Okay.
found in primary cuneiform texts in Akkadian and Babylonian that we can source? Or even Sumerian, if you want to go into there as well. And I'm gonna give everybody in here just a quick reference. If you want to look at any of these just online, because I have books on these, like actual academic books on these. But online for free, you go to livius.org, livius.org, and look up any of these epics that we're referencing. So you can go and read it for yourself to see if what we're saying is true or not. So that's the question on the table, Nabat. And if you don't mind, my brother, can you please answer that? Because I'm trying to follow where you're going. I just want to demystify any unnecessary correlations that we're making that is presupposed based on the knowledge that we all have of the ancient Near East.
Hey, listen, can I ask y'all a question right quick?
Let the
Both of y'all,
man
the
answer
bot
the
and
question.
All right. So I just posted. Let me answer the question. So I
yeah,
just
yeah.
posted at the top. I just posted at the top here another website, just like the brother posted or mentioned. This is
Yeah, that's for the primary cuneiform text. Yep, I'm familiar with it. We use that in
okay,
academia all the time.
right. Okay, okay. So, and there are many translations of the Sumerian text, not just on this website, because I think this website
Yeah, but
only has around
whose
three,
translation
four
would you
hundred.
prefer? Kramer, Black? Whose would you prefer? And we can read from them.
Well,
Which
I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't have a preference. I don't have a preference. I try to study all of them, and you know, we tend to, it tends to be biased. So, um, what I'm mentioning here,
no problem.
okay, all right. So what we're speaking about is Enki being mentioned as arriving down to earth. It says that Enki arrived to earth first, which is where he received his title.
Where are you
Prior
reading
to,
this from, my brother? Where are you reading it from?
well, we're speaking about the seven tablets of creation, the
Okay, so
Enuma.
yeah, that's what I'm asking so that people can follow what you're saying,
Yes.
right? Okay, so go
Right.
ahead, my
Right.
brother.
Okay. Okay. So I've mentioned it a few times now, but we're speaking about the Enuma Elish, spelled Enuma space Elish. And some people have other variations or phonetic transliterations of the word, right? But it means when on high. This is what it translates to, and it is speaking about the creation story of the arrival of these beings called Anunnaki from Nibiru, or the An, the sky, which is why it's being called when on high, Enuma. The first two letters in these particular tablets, En, can be transliterated An, relating to An or Anu for the Anunnaki. So we're speaking about an arrival. If you go to the, I think it's the sixth tablet within that compilation of tablets, it gives the creation of man, right? Equivalent to the creation of man on the sixth day that we
Are
find.
you referring to Eridu Genesis? Is that what you're referring to right now? Where it
Well,
talks about the creation of man?
Eridu is just a name, right? That would of a particular environment that was set up by these Anunnaki that
Yes.
translates to home, home away from home, or home from far away, right? And it became the word eretz in Hebrew. It became the word ard in Arabic, and it became the word earth in English. This same word that you asked about, Eridu, was not the name of the planet, but was the name of a particular environment set up by Enki again. Because when you say Eridu, it's directly related to Enki's side of the family. And it will be equivalent to the enclosure that was set up called the Garden of Eden, again,
Oh, I
that
was
we're
about to
reading
ask you
about.
that. That sounds like the Garden of Eden. My fault.
Exactly.
Now
Exactly.
we could read
Exactly.
the text
So
ourselves, brother. Just read the text,
now,
right? We have the text. We could just read the text.
yeah,
So I hear what
okay.
you're saying, and again, I'm not contending with that. Let's read the text in question and then make the parallel ourselves. Can we do that? And that way we can
Well,
best demonstrate it
that's why
that way.
I gave everybody the reference, because
Cool.
I'm not presenting any preferred translation. I'm giving people the website, right, where they can look up the text and read multiple like you said, this is what we do as scholars. We don't just we provide the references and the sources for people to look up the information on their own. That's why I spelled it out, and that's also why I posted the link at the top. But I'm not we're not here to read the text live. I answered your question. You see what I'm saying? And I also provided sources. we're here to provide references for people to do their own research, and that's what this is about. I hope I'm being understood on that.
No, no, you're fully understood. And again, I there's no, I don't have any petty qualms with you, right? Because we're all in a journey for knowledge, right? And I don't have it all, right? Nobody I know has it all, right? What I'm simply trying to do is
Huh?
based on the subject of the
Hey, can I ask y'all?
somebody needs to be muted. Somebody's talking.
Oh, that was
No,
me. I'm
what I was
sorry.
saying was, yeah, so far, Nabat, you're the only person to really walk with me through what the topic is. And the reason why that's important is because if somebody makes a topic, my expectation is they have knowledge on it, right? Because it seems as though, based on what I heard when I was eavesdropping when I first initially came in, that brothers and sisters was just talking about it, right? And it was a good conversation. Now we're getting meticulous with the information so that we don't mislead people, right? We want to be very careful when we share information, and we want to be able to give people the tools and resources to come behind what we're saying and be able to parse it out and look at it in its granular state themselves to be able to identify point for point that we're making. So I'm just asking, right, for the Ruach Elohim, the equivalent of that function that Enki or Ea has performed when we're looking at an Sumerian text, if we're going to go to Enki, or an Akkadian text with Ea, even in Babylonian text. I'm just simply asking, can you show us where he's playing a subservient role and he's hovering over the deep and he's taking instruction from a superior? Because that's what's going on in Genesis chapter 1. So I'm asking, can you just give us that primary text so we can see it? Because you can key it in on that website, right? So I'm asking you, which text? Don't just give me the
Right.
website. Tell me which text it's in so I can
I think I
identify it so
understand.
we can see the parallel transparently. That's all, my brother.
Okay, I think understand your question now. And to because what you're asking about is the form that you said,
Yeah, you could
right? You said
form
the word.
too. Yeah, if you want to use that, that's fine. Yep.
Well, no, I'm saying because you mentioned the word ruach in Hebrew, right? Which it means soul, but you say that it's being used in the possessive
Or
noun
nefesh.
form.
Nefesh means soul. So the concept of soul doesn't
Well,
come
that's
about
not
until the
that's
second
not
chapter. Hold on, my brother.
that's not true.
Hold on, my brother. That
That's
is
not true.
true. And if you can find a
The word
scholar that
that
disagrees with that, cite him right now, because I'm familiar with all the
any
work
Won't
scholar,
on
you?
that book,
Why don't
sir.
you cite it?
I
the
can
Okay,
tell
Don't
you.
you
John H.
cite it?
Walton.
I
Hold on, I
speak
give
the
it to you. John
language.
H. Walton. Hold on, I speak the language too. Come on. So you're not playing with somebody that don't know the language either.
Won't you
So
just
let's
say
treat
it
each
and
other as if
stop
we're
trying to?
intelligent.
Won't you
I,
just
I
talk
just
about it?
did. I just did. I just did. Are you listening? You're over talking me. How can you hear what I'm saying if you're over talking me?
You was just
So
talking
what
to
I just
boy.
said is Ruach. Are you done?
Hold on,
Let me know when you finish, brother.
one mic on Divine, right quick, y'all. One
Thank
mic
you.
on Divine.
So Ruach, the concept of Ruach going over the waters is the same way that you see the wind going over the sea. The same concept goes back to the Ugaritic text of the Baal epic, where we see Yam has a breeze going over him whenever he appears to do something. So when we see the word ruach, it does not mean soul. The concept of nefesh does not come about until the next chapter. Nefesh is nowhere in Genesis chapter 1. It's not there. This is why there's a disjunctive when you analyze both texts. And this is why people have
Yeah,
so
but
many theories between one and the other.
can I
So,
can I cut
go
in?
ahead.
Can I cut in?
I was
Hold on.
I
Of
was
course, of
making a I
course.
was making
Because
a I,
let me just say this,
go ahead.
because if we're going to get, because I said to you earlier, this discussion, that the way the title was, that's not an essence on how the discussion was going. It was just going in a direction of talking about these entities, Inky and Lil, its relationship to the Bible and relationships as far as those stories. Now, if we're going to get the the actual text of the Hebrew, and we're going to get into the text of the Sumerian. We got to keep in mind, as I already know that you know, that we're students of Dr. York. He is the one who did those types of translations. He's the one that put that information out. And I know you have your questions and doubts about those arguments. And so, then we would, because it becomes a linguist discussion, because that's where this is going, on what stuff really means in the actual language. Because if you're going to debate the meaning of ruach, when we put many books out on that, on that translation. If you're going to debate that,
I read them from
because
Dr. York. Trust me, I was a
okay,
student at
but
one point.
yeah, but Dr. York spoke multiple languages, and he translated the Torah himself. Now, have you done that yet? Translated the Torah
Brother,
and the Quran?
brother, yes, I have.
Now I'm
Right?
asking you.
Hold on. You
And
asked
so,
me.
have you put it? Hold
Brother.
on.
Let me answer the question. I have a thesis
It's
paper.
Okay.
either
If you
yes
want to
or
say,
no, though, Divine.
I
It's either
said
yes or
yes.
no,
I
bro.
said yes because I had to write a
And did you
thesis
put
paper
it?
on
And
it,
did you
brother.
put it
Okay,
out?
let him
Hold on.
finish.
Did you put
Yes,
it
it's
out
Let him
published,
for
finish,
brother.
the
It's
though.
public?
published, brother.
Okay.
Yes,
So
it's
you
published, brother. I had
no,
to do
no,
this in my
that's fine.
masters. So
No,
wait.
hold on, hold on,
So
hold on, hold on, hold
Hold
on.
on, Divine.
I'm
He
only
wasn't
asking.
through. Right.
And so if you did that, which is great, because then because
Hold on.
Dr. York had put out the Torah back in the 90s, and many people have the opportunity to look through it. And so that's why he set up question and answer classes so that individuals who have technical questions like yourself, when you want to get into the language and what translations mean,
And
that's where someone like him becomes important to have those discussions when if we're going to do a technical discussion about what certain words mean in language, because Dr. York has argued for years that languages have been purposely mistranslated. And one of his arguments that he also has made is that when you look at the Sumerian language, that scholars will argue it has no correlation to a lot of the Semitic languages, and he disagreed with that. And so, and he spent a lot of time trying to show those, those correlations, or identifying the correlations in those languages and how the changes in words and meanings are. And so he's very technical. Now you have the benefit, like you said, of studying his information and coming up with a adverse or counterpoint. And there's no point, there's no argument there to have a counterpoint, but it becomes when we're going to go technical now, because that's what you want to do. If you're going to go technical, then that becomes a totally different type of discussion that has to be done. I think it needs to be done in a better, proper setting if we're going to go in
and
a technical language
all right.
debate.
So
to
wait, let me do it.
answer your
Let me
hold
land my
on, to
plane
answer
here.
your topic, like what you saying, me and the brothers, a few of us, we was talking about this topic. It was pertaining Inky and Live, and I came up with this topic with the overlap. It's like going if it's coordinate with the Bible. That's all. And then we just took it from there.
Gotcha.
All right,
Thank
Divine.
you for sharing that, Mikey. And
Hold on for a second.
wait. Hold on, hold on.
Hold on. Cause I was shopping and my people was I was a little bit distracted. But yeah,
You good,
that's
Mikey?
what happened.
Yeah. So thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I'm hold on one second. I'm gonna give you the alley oop in 1 second. Let me just land off with this then, right? So if this is not the stage, like let me just make clear for the record. I was never a Nuwapian myself, right? I just studied Dr. York's work because I had friends and relatives who was part of the Nuwabian nation, right? So that's how I learned a lot of that information when I was younger. When I got older, I studied it for myself as an adult, and I went to various sessions with my brothers in the Nuwabian nation in New York and out here in Atlanta, right? So I have good relationship with brothers that's in that community. I have discussions with them all the time. Dr. York at his time was doing something innovative for our community.
Look,
Today
we
in
don't need all that,
2022,
man.
no,
We
no,
don't
no.
need
But
all that spill,
let me
bro.
just no. I'm
Man,
not saying
speak.
nothing crazy. Let me
Let the
talk.
man speak,
Y'all was
Gino.
talking this whole time, and I was silent for like at least an hour and a half listening to y'all
Nah,
talk.
you was talking too.
Brother, no, I was not talking. I was just started talking when y'all gave me the floor. I was asking respectfully and all of that. All I'm saying is, I'm not saying
All right.
nothing negative. Listen, brother, I'm not saying
All
nothing
right, so
negative
go
about
ahead.
that. Yes, let me talk. So what I was saying was, what he did at that time was innovative, and it helped elevate the consciousness of our people. In 2022, the information that Dr. York was sourcing at that time, anybody can get access to now, right? So what I'm saying is, now that that's the case, what we have to do is be transparent with the people who are in here trying to learn, ask critical questions, find the sources that the answer of this, because we all have opinions in here, right? All of us, right? Nobody's opinion is better than the other. However, outside of us, there's a consensus. The consensus is established based on these type of discussions on a scholarly center where they have to come pin something down as a foundation just so they can continue to build. Because if you keep arguing all day, you never build anything, right? So I was simply asking a question based on the title. Now I get the gist of the direction it was going. So I don't need to get granular or meticulous or get microscopic with the information. That's fine. So my last point that I want to make, and I want to be quiet because I know somebody else wanted to speak, and I wasn't trying to hide. I was just trying to ask questions, right?
My
The
answer
question I
right
have
here.
is this, right? Yeah. So the
All right.
question I have is this, right? In regards to the Torah, the mention of the term Torah itself, right? We don't have a reference to that in any archaeological artifact, right? Where it simply says Torah. That's something that comes much later. The attribution to Moses is something that is considered a legend. Okay, this is all acknowledged. This is not nothing that's a secret, right? I mean, unless people are religious fanatics and they don't want to see the truth. However, the actual context that encapsulates what people attribute to be the Torah does have a lot of original things in there that do not have an equivalent in another domain in the ancient Near East. I'll give you a great example, right? Have you heard of the Yavnayam artifact? Okay, so if you have not heard of that, and Yavnayam is a city on the coastal plains of Israel. I've seen it myself, right? So if you have not, what that was is that it was a reference to a particular ordinance, a local ordinance based on an issue that was occurring where a man's cloak was taken as collateral by his employer. So what the man did was he wrote a letter on an ostraka, which is a smooth side of a broken piece of pottery. He wrote a letter and he sent it to the governor of that province. And he said to the governor, according to our law, he cannot keep my cloak as collateral after the sun sets. Please adjudicate over this matter. The only reference that we have in the entire ancient Near East in regards to that ordinance is what people call the Torah. It's not found anywhere else. And there's several other points of that. And this artifact predates the written text. So
Hold
when
on.
you say
Let me.
that, go ahead.
Yeah,
Go
hold
ahead.
on. Because I think that's really where the discussion needs to start. The discussion needs to start before we get into technicalities of the text. Is the discussion needs to be about origins first?
Correct.
Because if we're going to talk about a text, we need to understand or comprehend where is this information really coming from. As you say, if you really want to help the people, and so that's where we need to really begin to look at where is this coming from. So let me just ask you a very simple question. You said, of course, according to the Torah, the Bible, this individual they call Moses wrote the Bible. So are you saying that he's a mythological individual or an actual individual? Because the what you said legend, I'm not clear. Is he real historical figure like Julius Caesar or Akhenaten, or he's not, according to you?
So that's a so I'm gonna answer your question. That all depends on what evidence we're looking at. If we go into the archaeological record for the late Bronze Age period, right, we don't see a direct correlation to a figure called Moses, right? So if you wanna look at it from that perspective, no. However, through what we call I would say intra is probably even better, intratextual data, right? That's based on a particular local group of people in the Transjordan region, right? We do have something there that we can surmise led to the character called Moses. Because you got to
Okay,
remember,
hold on.
in those
Okay,
areas,
hold on. Before you go
Wait,
on,
wait, wait.
hold on. So, because it seems the Torah seems to be clear that this individual called Moses really existed as an individual because it gives a birth, it gives his upbringing, it
yeah,
gives a lot
it
of
doesn't give you a
details,
timeline, though. It doesn't give you a
and
date,
and
though, right?
so right, and
And that's
that
for a
creates a whole
reason.
nother question, right? But first, I just want to get clear on the character that the Bible sets up because they made movies about it. We all seen it, right? The Ten Commandments and all of that. So they've given the impression, Europeans have given the impression that this is a real individual, and the Bible gives an impression that this is an actual individual like Julius Caesar in history. And so I'm trying to get clarity from you as an
Did you hear my
individual.
answer?
I heard it, but it didn't.
Okay.
It almost seemed like you're going to a body of people as
You
opposed to an
got to
actual
make it make
individual.
sense,
A
Divine. You
body
And
got
of
to
and
make it
so
people,
make sense.
brother.
so I'm
Okay,
You
saying,
got to make it
as
make
an
wait.
sense.
individual, as the well, I'm just saying, as an individual, at the way the Torah explains it, when you read the character, is that character as the Torah explains it, a real living being like Julius Caesar? That's what I'm saying.
We can't correlate to Julius Caesar. We don't even have his
Because
body. But listen to what I'm saying.
he's a real
Yeah. So listen,
historical figure,
because he's
and that's
he's
all I'm saying.
attested,
So
brother. He's attested because he is an emperor. You're gonna have heavy attestation to somebody who is an emperor, a king, or something
okay,
along those lines, right? So wait, let
so
me
you're
finish. You
saying that?
asked me a question,
Okay, go ahead.
brother. So all I'm saying is I answered your question from the archaeological record. I said if we're looking for this individual, this depends on what period you're looking for. If it's a late Bronze Age, early Iron Age begins at around 1166, according to Eric Klein's work. Okay, prior to that, you have the late Bronze Age period. If we're looking for him in a particular region at a particular point in time in a particular archaeological strata, I'm telling you that you're not going to find his name there. I'm
Okay,
telling
stop.
you
Hold
that
on.
because
Stop
well,
right
let me tell
there.
you why. Let me
Hold
explain,
on.
brother.
Before you go there. No, hold on. Before you go there, what I'm hearing, and I hope the people are hearing this, that the character as is laid out in the Bible, in the Torah, historically does not exist. Historically, there's no data that an
Yeah, he ain't
individual like
real.
that
Moses ain't real.
exists. Is that correct? Because I want to be clear on that before we go anywhere else. Why you think this
Okay,
archetype exists? Because
listen to
it
me, brother.
seems,
Okay,
I'm just saying, it seems when you read the Torah, that's clear that this is an individual
of
as
course, because
opposed.
that's like wait, that's like me writing a story about Nabat, right? Me and Nabat's cool. I'm writing a story about Nabat. Let's say Nabat himself was a wanderer, okay, and we talking about thousands of years ago. That internal community is going to have a social memory of that particular individual because the event that led to the later writing of it is pertinent to that community. Do you understand? That's why you find internal evidence
No,
for
I
it.
don't.
This is
Hold
what I'm
on,
trying to explain.
I don't
Okay, so let me give you an
understand
example in
because
Egypt. Hold on, let me go to Egypt then, or let me go to the Akkadian culture, and I can show you this is replete throughout the ancient Near East. This is not something that just is with the Bible. This is what I try to explain to you. So when you have a particular name in onomastics, which means the study of names, right? And onomastics, you can tell if a particular character has a literary name. Why? Because it directly correlates with the events that pertains to that person's life. Moses is a literary fabrication that is used to tell a story or a narrative in an ancient Near Eastern literary epic.
okay.
So
Hold
if
on,
I'm
stop
going
right
to
there.
brother,
Yeah.
hold on. That's like me looking for Santa Claus during the time period when Santa Claus first came about
Okay,
amongst
but
the Norse
hold on.
peoples.
Hold on. But listen what you're saying. What you're saying is how black people have been taught about this individual is a lie, right? So
Well, if they get
we'll
in it from
establish.
if they get in it from a religious body, a religious institution, of course it is, brother. That's there to
Okay, but let's
confine your mind. We know
but
that.
okay, well we need to establish that though. We need to at least
Okay. You
establish
know what?
because
I give
you're
that to
coming from
you.
a
Fine.
different you're coming from a different point of view with the general consensus about this individual. And so
Correct. So let me
I
build
just
on that.
want to
That's what you want to
well
hear, right?
hold
No, that's not the general consensus.
on.
No,
Hold
that's
on.
not true.
Be
Okay.
quiet. We ain't ever your damn two cents.
I'm just saying they taught our people for eons that this is an actual individual, right? And that this individual did all of these things in Egypt. He was raised in Egypt. He had his knowledge in Egypt, and he fought. He basically bucked the Egyptian culture. And now going into the Bible, it also says that his tribe, called the Israelites, were enslaved in Egypt. So that begins another question: is that historically accurate
The
according to
word, the
you?
word, the word abad means to serve, and it all depends on the social status of the people that will determine whether or not they were a slave or a servant or a worker. So you have
Were
three
these people
stages.
there? My
Brother,
point is, were these
yes,
people in
yes,
Egypt?
yes,
Okay, and
yes,
what were they
yes. So
known as
let me
in Egypt?
let me let me let me,
Hold
let me speak,
on. Okay,
brother.
go ahead.
Okay, go ahead. I'll wait till you finish. I don't mean
I'm
to cut you
saying,
off, my brother.
okay, so because we're getting, all I'm saying is that, especially us who's raised in here in America, we were all indoctrinated with this information, especially anyone who saw the Ten Commandments movie, right, by Sister B.
But
DeMille.
that's not
So,
historically
so
accurate, though. Why you keep
okay,
bringing
I'm
that
I'm
up?
talking about how our people
We know that shit ain't
have been
real.
Brother, we
That's his
know
brainwashed.
that.
point.
We
That's what the
Okay,
all
fuck he's
conscious,
saying.
so
brother. So we got that.
oh,
We got
oh,
that, Petty, right? We all
okay,
conscious. We understand that. Let's move to the
uh,
facts because if you want to know
all,
the truth, I'm trying to give you some information that anybody can go here and look up and source, right? So we can get to the truth. So
But
okay,
we know
black
yeah,
people have
but
been
Moses
we're
ain't
talk.
misled.
there, though.
Hold
We
on,
know
hold
How
that.
you
on.
gonna get to the bottom of something? How you gonna
We're
get to the bottom
talking
of something
about.
and you can't prove that the nigga existed, just like you can't prove
He,
Noah
he
existed?
wasn't trying to prove that he existed. What he was showing y'all was okay. It was said that this name, this person, this thing. Back from what the gist I get, that okay, cool. Maybe that person name and all that shit didn't take place like that, but it did happen right. That whole story that was written right there actually happened right here, and it was different names, and it
That's
was just
so
given
so
to
so.
you
Thank
in
you,
these
Bando.
names
Following
to
somewhat. So he's following somewhat because at least his inquiry shows that he is actually intentionally listening to what's being said. So when
Right.
I answered your
Right.
question, Petty. So wait, Petty, hold on. I answered your
Yeah.
question. I want to move away from the spookism. Forget that. Okay, we know black people have been bamboozled and hoodwinked. We already know that. Everybody in here knows that. That's why we're here talking about this information, right? So everybody knows that. So
But
let's get to
but
the truth. Go
right,
ahead,
but
brother.
the Torah lays this out, and so I'm trying to get clarity, at
Brother,
least the translation,
gotcha. So
because you're debating because you're also debating that all of those translations are wrong. Is that correct?
So, a translation, I can't say a translation is wrong per se. Something's always going to be lost in translation coming from one language to another. What I'm simply saying to you, my brother, is if we want to get down to the minuscule facts about how the case is built, that these people who later on writes this epic about this person named Moses, I'm trying to show you how that developed. Okay, what we're reading in the Bible is literature, my brother. You are aware of that, right? It's a piece of literature produced by a
I
culture.
agree. I agree.
So if
I
so if
agree.
a culture brother, listen, so if a culture produces for the same way that if I go to a griot in Africa and I know two griot associates that I build with, they tell me oral stories about epics and stuff
Correct.
all the time about individuals.
Correct.
I go to them and I say, wait, brother, that can't be real because of A, B, and C. He said that's not the point of the culture. That's not the point of me
I
telling you
agree.
this. Therefore, wait, let
I
me
agree.
finish. So the problem with our people is that they're not looking at it from the perspective that we are looking at it. I'm trying to get them to see how this developed, how the case is built, and how it ends up in literature. Literature
And I
comes
and I
later, comes after the events.
Yeah, and I respect that. I honestly do. I respect what you're saying. It's just that um, I'm trying to get clarity where that divide is, and as opposed to what the stories in the Bible are teaching
Sure, if you let me
from
speak,
what
I could
appears
tell
to be a
you.
literal sense,
y'all just caught
and to
miscommunication, man, based on y'all was talking about Moses and all this. Y'all on the same page, man. Y'all sound like y'all battling. Y'all
No, we're
both
not
on the same
battling. Yeah,
page, bro.
this is just how
Y'all just
strong
got
black
caught
men
up in
talk,
a
man.
miscommunication.
It's my belief that Moses really existed and that the people of Hebrew Israelites were called those who were banned by Most as well.
So the only thing problem with that, Royal, when you're talking in an environment like this, you got to prove that, right? So if you're saying that this
First
person
and foremost, we
existed,
established
you
that
have
we
to
can't
lay it out.
prove Abraham existed,
Hold on,
Noah
brother,
existed.
hold on,
Second,
brother, hold on.
wait,
There
no,
has to be,
first you
there has
cut
to
me
be.
off, so you're telling me to hold on. Have a little appreciation and respect for
Hold
what I
on,
have to say.
hold on,
Because the
Yeah,
concept, wait,
hold
one
on one
second.
brother, you
second.
cut into
Finish.
us
Let
talking,
me fin-
brother.
let
You
me.
cut into us
I'm not
talking.
cutting into
So now I'm trying to
anything.
build with
Nobody
you.
talking when I
Hey,
started
one
speaking.
mic, one
So,
mic, one mic,
so
one
let me
mic,
finish
one
what I'm
mic,
saying,
one
please.
mic, one mic, one mic,
All right,
one
cool.
mic, one
It's
mic,
one.
one mic on
It's
on
one.
me, one mic on me, one mic on me,
So every time
Royal.
I say something, I'm cut off. Cool.
One mic on me, Royal. 1 second, Royal. Let you can go next. All right. Let him finish, land his plane. And y'all be mindful now. Yeah, we giving all these answers out. Now I know it take a bit of time to give an answer. No answers are really just some direct shit unless it's yes or no. But try to be mindful that other people do want to speak or may want to give you some pushback or any of those things. All right, y'all.
I
Right.
respect that, man.
I'm.
No, so
I'm. A,
I'll land here.
I'm.
Oh,
A, okay. Wait a
guys
minute.
said,
My apologies. I'm gonna let you land, and then we're gonna let if there's a goddess that would like to
Are you
speak.
gonna cut my time off? Hold on.
Who you
You
speaking
didn't
to? You
have no
I'm
speaking to
talking.
me?
time yet, Royal.
I thought the brother just got done saying
Yeah,
spreading the law. Now you
Royal,
coming in and
Royal,
come on.
Yeah, because I can.
Royal.
I
That's
can.
respecting
Just
all
chill
three of
out,
us.
man.
Well, I'm gonna disrespect you and move you down. How about that? Again, Divine, go ahead and land. And if there's a goddess that wants to speak after Divine, then the goddess is gonna speak, and then Royal, you might can have it after that. Go ahead, Divine.
thanks, sis. And again, I would look forward to hear what sisters have to say as well, because they got a lot more patience and wisdom than us brothers sometimes. So anyway, so what I was simply, yeah, so what I was simply trying to say is the angle that I'm coming from comes strictly with dealing with data, right? I have my own subjective perspective. This is not the environment for it, right? So I'm not going to disclose my position in that fashion. What I simply want to do is be objective with the information, even if it opposes my personal stance, so people can find these facts out for themselves and they can do their own research, right? So, what I was simply trying to say, just to sum it off, is that if we look at other internal evidences in the Transjordan region amongst the people groups of what we call the Shashu peoples in that region of the Transjordan and the late Bronze Age period, when the toponym Yod He Vav He is found at Amarna West and the Temple of Soleb, right? If we go and look at that and see what those people groups were doing there and the excursions the Egyptians was doing in the Sinai, going to do those mines for copper, turquoise, etc., we see internal evidences of those peoples putting and stringing together an epic that will later on be called the Torah, right? And a narrative that relates to an individual by the name of Moses that starts in the book of Shemot or the book of Exodus, right? So what I'm saying is there's a historical element and then there's a literary element. If we just focus on the literary element, it's going to make it difficult to find the historical element. If you just focus on the historical element, you're going to miss a lot of the details that the immaterial part of the culture, which is the writing, it sheds light on the things that is silent in the archaeological strata. When you merge them together, you can see a fuller picture about what occurred, how it evolved, and how it came into the form that we have today. That's all I want to share with you, brothers and sisters. I'm not here to argue, to beat. You're my brothers. And said at the end of the day, I just wanted to give more data that could be substantiated so that y'all, as well as the audience, can go back and do the research for themselves so we all can come to our journey of enlightenment. And with that, thank you all for your time, and I bid y'all shalom and rahubat.
All right, Wadu, Wadu. We appreciate
Gratitude.
that too,
But
brother
I
Divine.
do.
it
Is
was
there
a
a
sister.
goddess that would like
Yeah.
to speak?
Any goddesses?
No.
Any goddesses in the building? Any goddesses in the building? Where y'all at?
All right, Royal.
All right, cool.
Hold on,
One thing I
hold
noticed in
on,
groups is
hold on.
interesting. So he say go and then cut
Hold
me off.
on,
You see what I'm
because
saying?
listen,
I'm
man.
tripping.
Wait 1 second, please, brother. Now, Divine came off her mic in the midst of the sister saying that to you. You see what I'm saying? And so I don't know, maybe she can't just be heard, maybe, or something, but she came off her mic before it was handed to you. And I was about to say that, but at the same time, she was saying that to you. So if you could just give 1 second, as Divine, because I did hear her come off her mic long before you started speaking or before the sister started speaking to you. So I just want to make sure that she didn't want to speak, bro.
Divine is the brother Bando. I'm not sure if you saw somebody that.
Divine Adelia is that's
Oh,
a
where's she
that's a
at?
female picture up there.
Okay, my bad. Oh, Divine Idea.
Yeah,
Goddess, we can't hear you.
and that's what I was saying. I didn't know if she maybe was speaking and we couldn't hear her
Yeah, we
or
still
what.
can't because her mic is
Her mic
open.
is off, but I
Yeah.
don't see any sound coming. Yeah,
You may have to go out and come back in, Goddess.
right. Okay, well, go ahead. Who is that? We had passed the mic to
It's
that was
Roy.
going to speak.
Go ahead, Roy.
Okay, Roy, go ahead, Roy.
You know, a lot of groups they consistently say let the goddesses speak. You know, one thing about it is a goddess will speak when she's ready to.
Listen,
Man, is you
brother.
gonna make a
Is that
point
what
Secondly,
you
or
came
not?
off the
let
Man,
me
mic
sit
finish
your
what I'm
saying?
saying.
motherfucking
Is
ass
that
Let
up
me
what
finish
now,
what
is
I'm
that what
boy.
you
saying, bro.
came off
Fuck
your
you
mic
mean,
to say?
nigga.
No, I want to say what I want to
Okay,
say.
well
What
then
I
You
want to.
say
respect the
that
goddesses.
respectfully. I was giving a goddess a turn. Before that, you had already spoken, a good while. So can I give somebody else a
What kind of
chance? I'm,
gentleman
I'm
is
more,
you?
You
knowing
know,
that
I
they
haven't spoke
be
since he said to take my 15-minute break. You know that, right?
Man,
in
nobody give a
your
fuck, bro.
point.
The
That was an
women
hour ago.
speak
I'm just
first,
saying. You
bro.
say I've spoken a lot and I haven't really
You
But
was
you
spoken.
smoking
did
a whole
I
before
just
lot.
want to
that. Before you
touch the
got that
topic if I
break, you
can.
did. Now you don't want another chance because you don't have to speak. I can still pass it.
I would love to speak if I get a
Okay,
chance.
well, speak.
Man, this nigga
Okay,
trip.
cool. All right. So, clearly there was a people in Egypt called the Hyksos, and these people were banished from Egypt by an Egyptian pharaoh. And these people that were banished were shepherd people who had a culture that is exactly in line with the Hebrew Israelite culture. And so the ideology, right? First, they said there's no way to prove Noah existed or any of these people. That's fact, and so that's why it's called faith. But when you look at certain tribes that were in Egypt that were banished and did practice these Hebrew Israelite faiths and traditions and things of that nature, we can substantiate that these people were there and were banished. And we can also substantiate with our conscience that there was a leader. Somebody had to lead them. So the point I'm trying to make is that to disenfranchise the idea.
Your mic went out, young brother.
You got a
You got a
phone
phone
call.
call.
That's what I want to say.
Oh, there you go. What? What fruit? Good. Who next?
Is that better, y'all?
Who
Can y'all
next?
hear
You
me
got
now?
the
Divine,
what is
yes,
it?
Is that
beautiful,
better?
yes.
Shit.
That's
Kind
I
better.
guess the
Okay.
goddess was ready to speak
Oh, you
now,
can't
Right.
so
go.
it's her turn.
Look how
Boy, she
the
was trying to
goddesses
Okay.
speak
work.
It's
He
before,
so
but
makes
she
shit all
couldn't.
good. Look how the
Yeah,
universe
what is
works.
wrong with y'all?
y'all so funny. I love y'all. I love y'all so much. You can't even imagine how much love I have for y'all. I just keep coming back to this room because I feel so drawn to the energy in this room. And I'm so grateful to you guys for doing this. I see so many spells being broken across the globe just by this room. And so I'm so grateful. So let me just not be all long winded because I'll ham you up for real. But here we go. Okay, so here we go. Because that's just me. That's me. I am love. So, all right. Now I'm listening to this Enlil. Now I'm just learning about Enlil and Enki. Okay, so I'm all tripped out anyway. But I'm like, all right, I'm gonna go with it. I'm gonna go with it. I'm gonna roll with it. And I'm like, all right. And so I've been doing a little research on the text, Sumerian. Is it Sumerian? Yeah, Sumerian text. So when I was digging around and digging around and digging around and looking, I come to find out that the word Adam actually in Sumerian text means animal. So that freaked me out because I come out of the Christian thing, and so we're told that Adam was like my daddy. That's your forefather. That's the ancestor. That's that he was, the image and likeness of God. And I'm like, okay, wait a minute now. Okay, but do you all know? So my question is, what comes first? How old is Sumerian versus Hebrew versus how does it work? How old is Sumerian? Because I'm always about going for the oldest documents that could be translated. So, and I heard of the Enuma Elish all my life since a little girl. I never knew what it was, but I've heard about it. But so, how do we put it in chronological order? Like, or can we? Or are these simultaneous documents? I mean, how do you do that? Because I'm not doubting that Enlil and Enki did not exist. I don't doubt. I mean, but I also know that what we know of them is a translation. So my question, well, I asked several questions. I'm sure y'all got the ones that I already said. I've had so much to say now and forgot. You done got me flustered. I'm sitting up here like, okay, so that's the question. The question is, how old is Sumerian text versus Hebrew text, or yeah, information text? I don't know what we necessarily call it. So which came first? Sumerian?
So
Okay.
I like to answer
That's
that for the
that's
sister
it.
if y'all are okay with
Who is
dates.
that?
Okay.
Who is that?
This is Divine. Since me and the
Yeah.
sister share a similar name, I think it'd be right if I could just share some information with
Okay.
Bless your
Oh,
heart.
her. All right. So that's an excellent question, sis, in regards to the dating of the text. So that's very important. Sorry. Hopefully, you didn't hear my GPS, right? No. Okay. Sometimes she be hating. All right.
No,
So
I didn't hear you.
if you're gonna look, okay, awesome, awesome. All right. So we're gonna look for the date. What you can do, I mentioned this source earlier. You can look up a website called livius.org, livius.org. Okay. And in this, it will give you the dates to these epics. The earliest epic that we have that's similar to what we call the book of Genesis is the epic of Atrahasis that we mentioned earlier, which comes from about the 17th century BCE, right? It's called the Epic of Atrahasis. We also have several other epics like Enlil-Enki and so forth. These are found in what we call the early Babylonian period, right? Where the city of Babylon became the center of everything at that in the Mesopotamia, right? As we call Mesopotamia, right? So that's the dating for that. Now, for the Bible itself, the Bible in the form that we have today is very late. If we're just looking at the part of what we call the book of Genesis, that was completed in the post-exilic period, which would be circa 600 to about 525 BCE, right? However, there were other works that was generated earlier, going back to maybe about the ninth century, and a lot of those come from what we call the royal court writings. So some of them you'll find like a lot of the older antiquated idioms of certain epics such as Leviathan, etc., and the book of Psalms. And those portions we find are kind of early, right? Also, the book of Job is an early work. It has a lot of archaisms in regards to Hebrew, some transitionary forms that we find of early Hebrew is found in there, which is shared with a lot of the Phoenician language. And that dates to about the 10th to ninth century uh, BCE, right? So in regards to dating, that's where we find it. In regards to the emergence of what begins to become what's called Hebrew, starts to begin in about the early Bronze Age period. That's when we find abjabs and so forth. Abjab is a stone that has a different characters or consonants, right? That's written on it, that's used as a scribal exercise when a person is about to write some form of literature or administrative work. Right. We also see these early ones show up in Egypt about 3100 BCE, and in about Sumer in about 3200 BCE. Right, when the cuneiform was first used to document receipts before it became to use administratively for the empire. Right. So hopefully, in regards to dating and time, that begins to give you some kind of idea. But any epic that we mentioned from Sumer, from Babylon, or Akkadian can be found on livius.org. They give you a preface which introduces you to the background, where it was found, the date, etc. And then you can use that information to compare what we find in the Bible. A good source of that is something called the Cultural Background Study Bible that's been produced by Zonathan. And John H. Walton was one of the chief publishers and contributors to that work. And he's an expert in the ancient Near East. And he also puts dates in the timeline to certain books that we find in the text itself, right? So that's how you can do a comparative analysis on both works from both streams of cultures in order to determine which one is older. But what we see in the Sumer text, the Babylonian, and the Akkadian text, we have the cuneiforms that date much older than what we have in the Bible today. So hopefully that answers your question.
And divine, can I?
Okay, so that's okay. Go ahead. No, well, I'm just gonna ask
No, no,
you
let
some
the,
more
let the,
stuff.
let the sis talk. Go ahead, sis.
Okay, so now we got that. So I'm, you know what? I heard everything you said, and I really did understand it. However, I'm still gonna ask it again, so I can actually think or say affirmatively that the Sumerian text was the predates the Hebrew text. No? Yes.
Of
Yes, as
course.
far as the text is concerned, yes. As far as the
All
text.
right.
Now,
Okay.
as far as the provenance of the ideas, the thought forms that's used, idioms,
Oh.
etc., that's another process for dating things, right? So let's say the written form of the Bible itself, the earliest that we have, based on the Jada principle, right, which looks at the Yahweh text, the Elohim text, the Deuteronomistic text, and the redaction text, right? And these are pretty
Okay.
much four contributors to what we call the Torah, right? Based on looking at the writing styles that's found in it, right? The
Uh
earliest that
huh.
some of those texts go, which would be the Elohim text, which is towards the north in Samaria, that goes back to about
Right.
the 9th, 10th century BCE. The Yahweh text is about 8th to 9th century, and then the Deuteronomistic text come forth about the 600 BCE, and the redaction text come during the Persian captivity, which happens about 525 to about 465. And some of these we see correlations to it in Elephantine papyri amongst the Aramaic text from the Jedaniah archive, right? So when we're looking
Okay.
at this as far as comparisons, dating is one thing for a literary work. But I can write something today, right? Let's say there's a nuclear bomb goes off and everything is destroyed, and I start writing books about the past, like Shakespeare. Let's say I remember Othello, and I write out Othello. And let's say 1,000 years pass, they found the work, and they say, "Oh wow, we found the work of Othello," and they look to see how I wrote it, right? Some of my colloquial speech, the way I write, my style, or so forth, is going to find its way in that text because it's being written down at a much later period. But let's say they go and do further excavations and they find earlier manuscripts of this book called Othello, and they say, wait, this seems to be earlier because the way the modern early English that it's written in differs than this guy named Divine who wrote this during this time period. So we have different ways that we can parse through a text to find out what parts of it is older, what parts of it is later. But either way you slice it, when we go and look at the Sumerian texts, they do predate the Bible, and in the realm of archaeology, that's the consensus, and nobody argues that in regards to the actual physical writing on cuneiform tablets.
Can I ask this
Okay.
question right quick?
Yep.
Let me ask this right quick, Divine. I'm asking this to Divine because I see he got a knowledge of dates, times, and the organization of it. And I'm asking this because of my experience on the plane, right? Could it be possible that in each of these civilizations, that these were the same beings just being incarnated over and over again? And when these beings incarnated into new life, that's when the new civilization began, and people, they pretty much followed the same shit, but it was a little different due to times and different wording then at that time. But anyway, do you think that it is possible that all the way from Sumer to Mesopotamia, ancient Kemet, and even up until now, that these beings, that deities that are spoken, are just being incarnated over and over again and
That's
over
an
again
excellent
up until
question.
this time?
Yeah, that's an excellent question and a very open-minded question, right? I can't give you a definitive answer to it. However, there are works of reincarnation that's found amongst the Akkadian texts that are borrowed from Sumerian culture, right? So that concept of reincarnation did occur, but it was only with certain entities and certain nobles. So it did not refer to maybe all the pantheon of entities or all peoples, but certain entities and certain nobles, they could reincarnate, they could reappear. Because you got to understand, in those ancient times, deities were landlocked to certain territories. This is why a lot of battles and stuff ensued and took place for, a person to expand a territory from one region to another. Well, because a
Right,
people group ruled that region and a deity oversaw that people group, then there was a clash. There was one both celestial and one terrestrial, right?
right,
And what happens is you had what's called an assumption that takes place where now the deities become intertwined. So the deity that wins take on the attributes of that local deity who that one people group defeated and assumes it for itself. There's a book called Yahweh Amongst the Gods. Go and check it out for yourself. Excellent, excellent work that's written. And pretty much what it shows you, it uses the Bible as its premise, right? Because people are familiar with it, but it shows you how in the ancient Greece, as a people group migrates and takes over smaller territories, they assume the attributes of the local deities into the patron deity of the people group who is winning, who's dominating, who's taking control. right? And sometimes this happens in reverse. For example, Beneath Anath, right? Bint Anath is the name of Ramses the second daughter. Well, Bint and Anath is not Egyptian. It's not Kemetic language, right? It's what we call Canaanite language from a subgroup of the Moabite Ammonite language family, right? He defeated those people groups. There was a goddess named Anat, who was a goddess of war, that when he got there, he liked the depictions. You know, they had excursions. Ramses and his, I think his third expedition, and his excursions in the region of Canaan, he liked how they depicted this deity. Right, she was bloodthirsty, similar to Thor. Right, bloodthirsty. She was fierce, and the peoples there, they adored this deity. They had these votive offerings of her, etc. So what he decided to do was name one of his daughters Bint Anath. This is when it works in reverse, where even though he dominated Canaan, there were parts of the culture that he liked from those Canaanite peoples that he acculturated and then inculturated into his own society by giving a name of one of those local Semitic peoples to his daughter, right? So it depends on how we're looking at this, how deities get assumed, territories that were initially landlocked, but then once battles ensue and wars ensue, you take it over. One of the things you first do is take on the attributes of that local deity, so those local people can worship your deity because they share the same attributes as their deity that was lost. And what this does is that removes any form of autonomy away from the people, so that way they can band back behind their god and overthrow the peoples. This happened actually recently amongst the people in Hatti, what we call Haiti. They summoned the Loa, which is their ancestral intermediary deities, in order for them to overthrow the French, because they refused to be indoctrinated with the form of religion that was being predicated on them at the time. And because there was no synchronization between the two deities, because the Europeans did not want to assume no African gods into their worship of Jesus, right? So because that happened, and they allowed these people to have a degree of autonomy on the days that they were off from working, which was only one day for 8 hours, right? The people used that social memory to conjure up their ancestral deities and use that power to overthrow the French. So one of the means of war tactics in the ancient Near East, is to assume one deity into another to prevent a people group from having autonomy to rise up against the superior group that is in power.